What is up, guys? Have you ever heard of the concept of political time travel? Yeah, it's intriguing, isn't it? That is what we're going to try on this video. I'm going to take you through 5 predictions for what I think is going to happen in UK politics over the next sort of 6 months or a year. And then let's circle back in 6 months or a year's time, and we're going to see how on the money I was. You up for that? All right, let's do it. So prediction number 1, I don't think there will be a general election until January 2025. Now, why do I think that? So the first thing is, like, there's a lot of chatter at the moment about, could there be a snap election? Could there be a spring 2024 election? I think if you were going to get an election in the diary before or around spring 2024, you would need to be getting your ducks in a row, like, now. Like, you can't just go on the TV and go, oh, yeah, we're going to have a general election next week, lads. These things take planning. You got to allocate resources and funding. You got to start coalescing teams together and make sure there's enough leaflets. Make sure there's enough hyper-targeted Facebook ads. All of that stuff needs copywriting and scheduling. Now, sometimes people go, well, yeah, just because it's not in spring doesn't mean it couldn't be in like May or June or July. Well, okay, look, then you get into sort of summer recess kind of territory. Then they all come back, but then it's conference season. I mean, it's possible they would do it at some other point, but I would say it is probable that if it's not spring, it would be January 2025. There's a couple of other reasons why it makes sense to put it off for that long. Also, they're way behind in the polls at the moment. All of the polls over the last sort of 6 months or a year have had Labour ahead by around 20 to 24 points. Now, if you're an optimistic Tory, this gives you time to just get that lead down. And if you're a pessimistic Tory, this gives you time to further loot the public purse. It's like if you drag it out as long as you possibly can, you still got your finger on the button. You can still sign off those government checks, enrich your donors, and then by the time you are eventually kicked out of government, maybe they come and scratch your back, right? This is how it works. Prediction number 2. I think the Labour lead that I've just mentioned, I think that will narrow significantly. I think that while I think the general election will not take place until January 2025, I think the general consensus out there for a lot of people is that there will be a general election soon. And so they currently have adopted a mindset that, well, we need to start seeing something that resembles Labour. Real leadership, real vision. Just give us some hope, Kit. I think there's a lot of disillusioned traditional Labour voters who currently are thinking, yeah, look, I don't know if I can get on board with this. Like, if we're talking about the Rwanda policy, give us some hope that you're going to do something a bit different. If we're talking about cuts to universal credit or vital public services, it's like, please just tell us that you're not going to continue on the austerity. Oh, you are? Oh, okay, well, great. Now, it's my personal belief that Keir Starmer's sort of stuck in a rock and a hard place there. Like, he can't really commit to what he's going to do, spending or otherwise, until he gets into number 10 and he looks at the state of the exchequer. And if the Tories have, spaffed it all up the wall, he's kind of pushed into making those awkward decisions. But he can't say categorically, I won't cut spending in this area now, right it like this far away from the general election, when he doesn't know what state the economy will be in by then. But I think, while I have some sympathy with him for that, I think there are a whole load of formerly Labour voters out there who are now like, look, I don't know, man. We're this close to a GE and you're still not giving us any, maybe I'll vote Green. Maybe I'll just stay home. I think to date, Keir Starmer has adopted a strategy where he's like, look, never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. It's that sort of vibe, right? And consequently, Labour are largely seen as a sort of an alternative to the Conservative Party, but not really in an opposing sort of particularly different policy or style kind of way. Instead, they are largely seen, I think, by these kind of former Labour voters and frustrated left of centre types like myself. I think they're largely seen as conservatism without the corruption, without the incompetence, Like, if we look at Sunak's slashing of the RAC concrete maintenance budget, like, that caused a whole scandal. Or if we're looking at the PPE, like VIP fast lane stuff, or the way that Partygate was handled, or the testimonies at the inquiry recently, a lot of this stuff, a lot of the problems that the Tories have created for themselves have sat within either a pillar of incompetence or corruption. But it is vitally important to remember that both of those things are only a problem for parties who actually reside in government. And what I mean by that is it's fine for Labour to just kind of stand back and go like, oh, look, they're making a mistake. Look at all these scandals and everything. That's fine for them to coast into power on that. But we shouldn't be under any illusions that once they are in power, we might actually start to see that these two parties are more similar than either one of them would really like to admit. So yeah, just to circle back to this second prediction, I expect that the Labour lead will narrow because there are so many frustrated Labour voters like myself who see the modern Labour Party as almost identical to the Conservative Party ideologically. They certainly seem to inhabit a lot of the same centre-right sensibilities now. And whereas, up until now, we've looked at them like, okay, well, look, you're the vehicle that will get the Tories out. So maybe I could look the other way until we just get you into power. And they will say, I'm not overly happy. I might vote Lib Dem or I might vote Green. So I think you will start to see that come down a little bit. Prediction number 3. I think there will be a leadership challenge to Rishi Sunak by March. Why do I think this? So, the Rwanda vote has just taken place. That was 10 days ago now? And even though it was reported in the Daily Express as Sunak's victory and he's, rallied the troops, he's got everyone behind him, the reality of that vote is it was incredibly narrow. He only just got it over the line, and he only did so by making compromises, by begging people, allocating funding to their constituencies that they wouldn't ordinarily have received. I mean, that's my assumption. We still don't know what deals and what, compromises he made to get that over the line. But what we do know is the initial reaction afterwards, which was by people like Mark Francois, by the ERG, by people like Robert Jenrick, everyone saying, we don't abandon this, but we've still got some way to go, this bill, but we're going to try and get it there. But if it doesn't change, if it still adheres to international law by the time it comes back to the Commons in early January, well, then we might have to reject it. Then we'll vote it down. Now, if they do vote it down, remember, Sunak he's stuck with this because he can't get it through if Rwanda aren't on board with it, and they say it needs to adhere to international law. But he also can't get it through if the ERG aren't on board with it, and they say they won't sign it off or vote for it if it's as supposedly lenient as it is. So to get this bill through, voted for, and to have it become law and for it to then be a success is like trying to fit a triangular object through a spherical hole. And I think either this bill will be voted down in early January, in which case, maybe I'm talking out my rear end. Maybe there will be a spring election. But I think even if it gets through, you will see how weak Rishi Sunak is. And I think when you're dealing with leadership challenges and, very aspirational individuals like Suella Braverman, look, there's already rumours that there's up to 20 letters that have gone into the 1922 committee to generate this leadership challenge. So if and when this Rwanda policy does all fall to pieces, I don't think it'll be much longer that Rishi Sunak remains unchallenged. Prediction number 3. The Daily Mail are going to go absolutely hysterical. They're going to go crazy. You thought they were insane before when they were running headlines like our Remainer universities and enemies of the people. You haven't seen nothing. It's going to be insanity on steroids in 5th gear. Okay, so why do I think this is going to happen? All of the hysteria of editor Paul Dacre that we saw before, that was when things were going well for them. That was when headlines were being reeled out in support of Brexit, but while they had Theresa May in office, and then it was Boris Johnson after her, but it was still a Tory government. It was still Brexiters pulling the strings. That was how bad he got when things were going well for him. Imagine how insane the Daily Mail, imagine how out there Paul Dacre is gonna get as we gear up to a general election, and it's one that Labour are polling to be winning. Paul Dacre is going to go just treehouse, out to lunch, crayons on the back of a cereal box, crazy. Prediction number 5. The UK economy, get ready for this, you may need a stiff drink. The UK economy is going to suffer hugely, probably in the first or second quarter of 2024. I've reached this conclusion, or this prediction, if you like, by looking at the FT, looking at a few stats of different economies and so on. America's economy, I know it's not, it's obviously not a like for like for reasons that I can touch on a little bit now, I suppose. But America's economy also suffered a bout of inflation, just like we did. America's economy also suffered interest rate hikes, although it didn't impact their population in quite the same way because they have much, much longer term mortgages than we do. We have like 2-year fixed, 5-year fixed, and so on. But despite COVID, despite the interest rate rises, despite the inflation, America's economy has been able to bounce back to 5% growth. I mean, that is pretty startling. That is robust. Now, you contrast that with the UK economy. Inflation, interest rate hikes, and then we look at the growth. Like, what is our growth? What has our growth been? For ages, just nominal or just negligent. I think it literally flatlined last time it was published. I mean, just as a sort of, a side note, I think it's really interesting that the US have longer term mortgages, and so the interest rate hikes didn't impact their population, didn't decimate people's disposable income, send them propelled out of their houses, didn't impact the private rental sector in the same way that it's going to. And that is imminent over in the UK economy now. And so because it didn't reach out and touch people in the same way, maybe there's something in that. Like, people are still free to go out and spend their money as they wish. Disposable income is still flying. And so they've been able to benefit from that. And they've seen that 5% growth. And in a sort of similar fashion over in Europe, we've got Switzerland, right? Switzerland did not hike their interest rates in the same way that a lot of other central banks did in the last year or two. And consequently, their inflation has sort of, come down. And people are not adversely affected in the same way that they are in the UK. Anyway, look, if you look at the UK economy, we've got homelessness soaring. That's up a quarter only on last year. In some places, it's gone up by 100%. In Southampton, it's up by 300%. We've got people's mortgage, outgoings doubled. I mean, we all know that. But now that ripple effect is going to start hitting the private rental sector. There was a headline on the front page of the FT this morning about corporate bankruptcies soaring. And there's, again, a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, there's support that was put in place throughout the pandemic that is now kind of winding down, but also a lot of businesses take out loans in the same way that you or I would take out a loan or a mortgage, and those interest rates have also gone up. So there's a lot of businesses that are like, well, hang on a second, we took out a loan for £300,000 so we could redo our premises or, invest in marketing or something, and now that loan is got so there's a lot of bankruptcies, a lot of homelessness, a lack of GDP growth, and a colossal national debt. I mean, frankly, it's astounding to me that it has taken as long as, I'm predicting now that in the first 6 months of next year, there's going to be some sort of deep problem in the UK economy. I don't know if it will take the form of a housing crash or if it will first sort of flare up with unemployment or if it will be a sort of mixture of both. But it's shocking to me that it's taken as long as, to that for it to really explode. And of course, in any other era, you would be asking yourself, well, what are the government doing about it? But there's absolutely no appetite or motivation for the current or soon to be legacy Conservative government to fix any of these problems or prepare for the chaos when they know pretty strong likelihood it's going to be Labour who are in office and will have to manage this and will then bear the brunt of the blame for a housing crash or for millions being made unemployed. I mean, some would say that it's not just the Conservatives standing back and doing nothing to prepare or sort of pre-fix or plug the leaks in the boat. Some would say, not me, I mean, I would never make such assertions, but some would say that the Conservative Party are actively trashing the economy specifically to make Labour's job so much harder when they get into power. But anyway, those are my 5 predictions for the next sort of 6 months, year. Let me know what you think is about to happen to us. If you think I've got anything right or wrong, let me know in the comments below. All the best.